Welcome to this Orchid webinar. My name is Nathalie, and today we will focus on how Orchid modules can help Sage 300 users run the business more efficiently, increase collaboration among staff and external stakeholders. We'll also look at how business rules can be enforced as effortlessly as possible, which leads to improved customer and staff satisfaction. The scenario we'll look at is Sue enters a sales order from a customer with a discount. Because of the low margin, it needs to be approved by the sales manager. When the order is released and approved, sales team gets a notification through Microsoft Teams. And then the finance manager needs to approve increased credit limit for customers, and the sales manager is notified and approved returns. On the purchasing front, a buyer receives a report and notification of low stock. They can then place POs, and POs above a certain amount need to be approved by the purchasing manager. Once the stock is received and the invoice entered, the invoices need to be approved by the finance manager, ensuring separation of duty between purchasing and finance. Finally, on the finance and cash flow side of things, before payments are released by the finance manager to create an EFT file, the payment batches need to be approved. And changes to some configuration options, in particular in EFT, also need to be approved by the finance manager. This video is not a detailed training video, it's a presentation of tools and configuration that support Sage 300 setup. We'll look at collaboration when processing transactions, approval business processes, and role-tailored console. We'll see how to review documents when processing OE transactions, make sure notes and relevant information are available. The type of business processes we'll look at approving are when key options are set up to ensure separation of duties enforced, alerts and notifications when processing returns, and approving payments before processing EFT. And the example we will look at a finance manager, a sales manager, and purchase manager who have different view of the information. Now let's dive into Sage 300 logged in as Sue, who will enter an order from Mr. Ronald Black, one of our largest customers. I'm going to enter the new order for Mr. Ronald Black. I can see his prior sales from last year when the credit limit was last changed and copies of prior invoices. When I select an item, I'll also get some notes special for that items, including in red some urgent or important notes. And as I select different items, I get different notes that apply to the different items in my inventory. So let's select our fluorescent desk lamp. And we can see the documents on the right-hand side being refreshed with the special QA documents for that item. Mr. Ronald Black has asked for a special discount because he's been ordering lots of items, so I changed the price to a lower price. Make sure I enter my purchase order number. I get to approve the credit limit. And I can see that the credit limit might be a bit too low considering the volume of transactions with Mr. Ronald Black. So I'll deal with that separately. And when I post my order, the workflow will start automatically and check the margin on all the lines. So because some lines are below my minimum margin set configured as 10%, the order has been put on hold and needs to be approved by the sales manager. In processing my order, I realized the credit limit for Mr. Ronald Black is too low considering the volume of transactions he's doing with us. So I'm going to increase that credit limit, and I know that this will require an approval from the sales manager or the finance manager depending on the amount. I can view the previous credit limit approvals from the screen or from the note on the right hand side, and in this case I'm going to set it to 85,000. Which will start the workflow and tells me who the approver is in this case and what the current credit limit remains as. Let's now look at Sage 300 logged in as Anne And particularly, let's look at the external workflow console. I can see in different colors the completed approvals, the pending approvals in yellow, and in red the ones which are probably more urgent, also waiting for approval. And all these colors are configurable in the workflow. So first, I'm going to approve my customer credit limit request for Mr. Ronald Black. I can see it was requested by Sue. The requested amount is $85,000, and if I know Mr. Ronald Black, I can drill down to see more information about the customer or the customer activity, or I can straight go in and from the console approve. As I'm approving, I can enter a comment and the new orders coming through, so let's increase the credit limit. This will notify the person who started, in this case Sue, that the credit limit has been increased and update the value for that customer. Now I can go and approve my order. I can drill down to the underlying order so that I can see the details and see why that order margin is low. Maybe it's okay because one line has a low margin, but there's other items, or it's an item that's on a special promo. So I can review my order. I can then approve the order directly from the order screen using this little icon here. Or if need be, I could also reject the order and leave it on hold. So I'm going to approve the order, enter a comment, and that comment will be saved in the workflow history. You can see now my console is green, that record has been approved, and I don't need to do anything about this one anymore. If I look at the order, I can see that it's been taken off hold, and I can then use this little custom button to print an email, so that will save the order confirmation as a PDF in the folder configured for document management link, and email it to the customer if they've selected email as their preferred delivery method. So that's the email being sent to Mr. Ronald Black. I can see that the order confirmation has been saved in a folder, and I can view the order confirmation document when I'm looking at the order. Finally, the team gets notified through Microsoft Teams, so I can see the message can be configured. In this case, we're just saying that the order has been created and approved, and that includes the comment that I've entered when I've approved, okay, as is part of the special promo. Notifications can be done by email as well, or a combination of email, Microsoft Teams, and any other tools that you might want to integrate with. Looking again at my console as the sales manager, I can see that there's an RMA that's been entered and that also needs to be approved. I can drill down and open the RMA screen where I've recorded the details of the item that the customer wants to return or repair. As I'm looking at it, I can see some different information, different notes in different documents. The customer original invoice that's been linked to the returns, and the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, that's been saved against this customer in a custom table in Sage 300. So when I can see they've got a Net Promoter Score of 9 out of 10, that's a really good score. So I must make sure that this repair and this return is handled the best way possible, because they're a really good customer of ours, and probably in part because we deal with our repair and our returns so well. So I can look at my returns, make sure everything has been entered correctly, and talk to the QA team if necessary. I can come back to my console and approve my RMA from here. When I approve it again, I can enter a comment that will be stored in the workflow history and can be added to email back to the user who started the return or to the customer. All this facilitating the transparency and the communication between the different stakeholders. And when I look at my return again, it's been marked as complete, and I can now generate my credit notes or my replacement order in order entry, or if it's related to a vendor item, generate my PO return. I can also see that my team has been notified in Microsoft Teams that the return has been approved. So again, this shows you an example as to how Sage 300 can be integrated with other tools to facilitate collaboration. Looking at the console logged in as Anne, I can see that everything has been approved, everything is green. That's great. I have nothing left to approve. And when I log in as a user who can have a bigger picture as to what's happening in the overall organization, I can see what has been approved, what is still pending from various users, various departments. I can then decide to follow up if required, to reassign to another user if I know that some users are away, or approve or reject myself if I have rights to do so. We have more transparency as well as full accountability and auditability of what's going on. Let's now look at how this works for the purchasing department. Every morning I receive an email automatically sent from Process Scheduler and a script that alerts from what's going on in our stock and send me a message with a list of items that are below the minimum level. So here I have a list of items. I can click on that link, which will automatically open the Sage 300 screen if I have rights to do so. And I can therefore now view my location details. How many items are in stock, on purchase order, or on sales order, as well as the different notes configured for that screen for that item. So I can do my analysis, my review using custom reports or using an Info Explorer cube to look at my back order quantities and my stock movement. I'm now ready to place my purchase order with vendor 1200. As I select the vendor, I can see the previous purchase orders sent from that PO. I can select my item. And again, I've configured it that I will see notes and documents linked to that item when I'm processing purchase orders. I can enter the details for that purchase order, including the quantity and the cost. Now, in my process, in my business, I know that purchase orders that are above my delegation of authority need to be approved by the purchasing manager. And some small POs don't require approval. In this example, we're looking at a PO that requires approval and has been placed on hold until approved. The approver receives an email notification. A note has been entered against the PO with the reason why it's on hold. When I log in as Dan, the purchasing manager, I'll have a different view of my console. I can see the purchase orders that I have approved, completed, which are in green, and I can also see the one that's pending. I have a little bit of detail on the console, but I can also drill down to the actual purchase order or to the vendor activity or vendor screen to get more detail. And from there, I can approve from the screen or I can approve from the console or reject if need be. In this case, I'm going to approve that purchase order and enter a comment that will be stored in the workflow history and or attached to documents and notes relating to this purchase order. This enforces full auditability of what I'm actually doing here. We're also enforcing separation of duty. If I try and approve a PO that I have entered, I'm going to get a message, an error message, and the PO can't be approved, saying that a separate team member needs to approve that purchase order. The final role we're going to look at is Steve, the finance manager. When I logged in as him, I have yet another view on the workflow console. I can see some approvals for EFT options and for creating EFT files, some approvals relating to GL accounts, as well as some customer credit limit that have been assigned to him above a certain amount. But what we're going to focus on now is approving AP invoice batches. So my purchase order has been receipted, the invoice has been entered in the system, and it's flown on the way to accounts payable. So I know the purchase has been approved, but I want to actually approve the invoice batch, make sure that everything has been done properly, allocated to the right accounts. So I can drill down to my invoice batch to review the detail, or if I've already reviewed the posting journals, I can approve, and at that point that will post my batches. That's how I've configured this workflow. When I approve it, it gets posted automatically by the finance manager. Finance manager also approves creation of EFT files to ensure the cash flow is okay. So Sue will actually start the process of creating the EFT file to request the approval if it hasn't already been done so. She's going to request approval of 2 payment batches. The first one for stock purchases, and I'm informed that approval is required before she can actually create the file. Let's log in once more as Steve, the finance manager, who's in charge of the cash flow. When he looks at his console, he can see various requests for approval relating to EFT options, GL accounts, AP invoices, customer credit limit. The one we're looking at now is around creating the EFT file. So there's 2 pending requests, one for payment batch 63 and one for payment batch 64 for $13,000 and $26,000 respectively. He can approve the one for $13,000 and reject the one for $26,000, for example, if cash flow is a bit tight this week. Let's approve the one for $13,000. That will change the color on the console and send an email notification to the person who started it. And when I reject it, it goes back to the wait stage so that it can be approved at a later stage when the cash flow situation has changed. And you can see the email coming through that the payment batch has been approved, and you can now create the EFT file. So once Sue has been notified of that, she can then create the EFT file and send it to the bank, making the collaboration easier, and again full auditability and transparency as to who does what. We've looked at various examples of different roles in the organization, the sales manager, the purchase manager, the finance manager, who use the console to group together the different approvals and notifications that they have about transactions happening in Sage 300. In addition to facilitating collaboration and management of notifications and approvals, we're also enforcing accountability and full auditability of what's going on. So if I look at this purchase order approval, for example, I can look at the history and see that it was started by admin, reassigned to Dan. Admin tried to approve, so it remained in the wait stage, and then eventually Dan approved it. And while this is not a detailed training video on setting up Extender workflow, just want to show you some of the basic setup to demonstrate that it requires configuration rather than customization for most purposes. So to change the colors on the console, you would set up some colors in there. You set up your user groups in the workflow area. So for example, Steve is the AR approver, finance manager is made up of those 2 users. And then you go and configure your workflow templates. The order approval workflow, for example. So we can see our different steps of the workflow here. We can see, for example, when we are approving the workflow, we're prompting a user for a parameter. We are sending an email using this email template, and we can configure who's going to receive the email. This is how we configure our notification in Microsoft Teams, and we can change the text that goes to Microsoft Teams in here. And to change the color, we just come here and choose the color name that we want. To add the buttons on the console for approving or rejecting, we use this progress to here. So if I'm in the wait stage, I can go to either approve or reject. and that will automatically add the buttons to the console. And then the final key step of the configuration is to optionally add icons to the Sage 300 screens, which we do in Information Manager options. In here, the order entry one we were looking at, we just tell the Sage 300 screen OE 1100 that based on the order number that's displayed on the screen to show the OE order approval workflow. That gives the users who are flagged as Orchid users the icons on the transaction screen where they can view the log and progress the workflow. We've looked at how this helps collaboration when processing transactions by looking at documents, notes that are available on the different screens as required. We've looked at different approval of business processes using external workflows in different modules, including EFT processing, where an approval is required before processing the EFT file, as well as alerts and notifications of RMA returns. In some examples, we're demonstrating the separation of duty, where the person entering a transaction and the person posting will be a different one. And all this is glued using the Extender module, in particular through the role-tailored console, where we looked at Finance Manager, Sales Manager, and Purchase Manager examples. Thank you for your time, and for more detailed training videos on how to set up these modules, you can look at our website